growing up as a black kid in North York, Ontario, there weren't, especially in the '70s, there weren't a lot of my peers who were from the same background or the same race, and that was also reflected in the comic books I read. There weren't a lot of people who looked like me who bought the books, other than my cousins. They were probably my biggest role model, and so being an only child, I had them to look up to, and I also was able to read their books. And so for me, it was okay. Going into the comic book stores, there weren't a lot of black comic book shop owners, but that still didn't stop me. I was just hungry for the stories. My favorite hero was Spider-Man, Peter Parker. And, he's just an average white guy. But his story and being an everyman is what related to me. He wasn't rich like Batman or Tony Stark. He wasn't an alien like Superman. He was just an average guy who basically made his life worse by trying to make the city better. So I could relate to that. But even though there weren't a lot of black heroes, there were still a few that were absolutely, they hit home. Power Man, Luke Cage, who's now coming to prominence with his own Netflix series. Black Panther. Those are two characters that I absolutely loved growing up. Even though Spider-Man's my favorite, I hold a special kind of place in my heart for characters like that. And it wasn't until you got to the 80s and the 90s where more characters like Spawn were black. You actually had a black Captain Marvel in the mid-80s where she could control light. That you started to see more, but that still didn't change how I felt about the genre. Still, there's a part of me that I realized that there has to be diversity within the genre. So not having characters where, like they were in the '70s, where even if they were a superhero, they had black at the beginning, like Black Lightning or Black Goliath, or be tied to kind of like a cultural stereotype like Brother Voodoo. So they still were able to carry along the narratives in certain stories, but they weren't necessarily representative of everything. And we're now in an age where there's actually speculation about Idris Elba becoming James Bond. It just shows that we've come a long way in 40 years, that you could actually have an iconic character like James Bond, like Peter Parker, who has now been replaced by Miles Morales in the Spider-Man universe to a certain extent, where you could have a black Spider-Man, you could have a black Captain America. Those are not things that are as taboo as may have seemed decades ago. But what I really like to see is their own characters without being kind of like piggybacked on top of characters that already exist. So instead of a black Spider-Man or a black James Bond, have him be James Bond, but not have the name James Bond. Have black females, have Asian females, have people of all races being represented. Because we live in a multicultural society, there's no reason why the comic books cannot reflect what we see around us. Whether it's someone who is gay, whether they are transgendered, the things that teenagers go through nowadays are not the same as what they may have gone through in the '60s, and I think the books have to reflect that. And I'm kind of happy that they are. And we even have a Star Wars movie where the lead is a woman, and the second lead is a black guy. I think we're kind of like in a fantastic age right now where that's concerned. And it can only get